What's up guys, Savjz here. There's been a lot of talk about Card Errata in Riftbound. Just last week, a lot more cards were errata'd, and then on the Chinese tournament stream, they showed a special message, a video from Dave explaining that stuff. So now we're going to watch it together.
Folks, ni hao. It's Dave Guskin, Riftbound's game director, here to talk about Card Errata. We've seen a lot of community discussion and feedback on our recent Errata update for Spiritforged, so I want to take a moment to acknowledge the feedback and discuss our approach here. In general, we want to avoid Errata outside of very specific cases to fit within Riftbound's rules and intentions. However, we were well underway with set design for future sets by the time these first ones launched.
It's really important that even digital card games have to work several sets in advance. And now it's a physical card game, it's a new one. There's all, printing and all that, so it's understandable. But it's just really important to remember.
Our team was learning along the way, and we realized that we needed to errata certain cards to support long-term health of the game. As a result, you'll see more errata for these first few sets, but then you can expect less in future sets.
So I think a good example is that there's the many cards that are basically missing the text until end of turn. There's a lot of those in set 1. There's still some in set 2, but going forward, I imagine that any set that's being designed and hasn't been printed yet, or it's can still be changed, will not be having those mistakes again.
To help set expectations, I'll share some more on our overall philosophy around errata. To be super clear about it, we know Origins and Spiritforged have more errata than longtime TCG players may expect. We plan to have less with each set release.
I think it's somewhat understandable because the game is a little bit on the complex side. It's not as complex as Magic, but it is a lot more complex than something like Lorcana, in my opinion. And I think that just the fact that you're playing cards on your opponent's turn, that's not something that exists in every turn. So I think a lot of the more complex interactions also come from just the fact that, you're playing cards on both the players' turns.
We don't issue errata lightly, and we want to use it only when we see cards with unintended gameplay impact, ambiguous functionality, or those that don't quite work within our updated rule set. Errata may impact the effective power level of cards, but we don't see errata as a balance patch lever for Riftbound.
Another really important thing, so I've been seeing this floating around. People are talking maybe they should nerf, this was a nerf to Igatian Rain and Falling Star, and now maybe what should they nerf next? Should they nerf Draven Legend, so the exhausted draw? That's not, there's no confusion like that with Draven. So it was not done. These erratas were not done to balance the cards, and in the future also it sounds like we shouldn't be expecting any kind of errata with balance in mind.
We care most about clarity and gameplay intent. In particular, we've seen a lot of discussion around the errata for Falling Star and Igatian Rain, so I wanted to spend some time talking about those changes specifically. We developed reflexive triggers to solve a rules problem in Origins, allowing players to choose and react to targets that needed to be chosen after other effects resolved. But when we decided to apply it to cards like Igatian Rain and Falling Star, we found that in those cases it was confusing to teach and it had weird, unintuitive consequences, such as cards like Not So Fast.
So I think that everyone who's been playing a bunch of Riftbound has had to teach someone else how those cards work. I think there's been a lot of confusion around it. I also remember seeing half an hour video on YouTube just about how the reflexive triggers work on those. So they certainly were confusing. But now with cards like Not So Fast and some new stuff, it's getting kind of worse. So I'm guessing that's why they're taking action now.
Where you expect it works one way, but secretly it works a different way. We're seeing a lot of new players joining Riftbound at the Spiritforged launch, in China and globally, and they're experiencing some of these same learning challenges for these cards. We know that these cards did have their effective power affected by errata.
People love to talk about how they were nerfed and stuff, but it's just, no, that's not what happened, okay? Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Incidentally, which we believe was the right choice for the issues that they were set to cause, the power level was not a consideration in this decision. There's always a cost to change, and that's why we only consider change like this, errata, when we feel it's necessary and only in rare cases more than once. We make changes when the rules aren't defined sufficiently or the outcome of a more intuitive or straightforward cards or rules is worth the cost to change. Finally, even though we are expecting to reduce errata in future sets, no matter how much we can anticipate in playtest, there are so many talented players in the world who are playing at extremely high levels and with major ambitions to be the best. That drive and scale of testing means that we see creativity beyond anything we can anticipate and design around, no matter how much playtesting we do internally. That's the joy of TCGs, to be honest, and we'd rather take those risks to see powerful, complex interactions and accept that they're part of the game, rather than overcorrect and deliver a game that's bland and unexciting.
So I wanted to like talk about this because some of the worst sets in many DCGs, like Hearthstone, but also others, have been those that the developers have been playing too safe with. It feels that every time like, you make a cool card, it's like certain risks have been made. Like when there's a cool combo, it always like is there something that even makes it cooler, or is there something that's gonna break it? But like I think it's really important to like acknowledge that this is their design philosophy. Like the Riftbound team is willing to take risks and to make cool cards. Like you're not gonna just make some like vanilla units just to be safe that nothing breaks ever.
That being said, especially as a new game, we're comfortable paying the cost of this errata to make sure we can scale that complexity and interactions in a way that's fun, rather than confusing or unintuitive.
So I think one of the more things that I want to say about that is that I think a good example here would be where it's like, you make it more complex so that you can scale on it, would be actions and reactions. I'm sure you could have made a set one with just actions and, just pick them carefully. And maybe for some new players that would be easier because the newest of new players, they always like they can't tell the difference between actions and reaction. I've certainly encountered this, and I'm sure many of you have as well, where someone is playing an action at reaction speed. It's just like having those separations allows for so many more cool things in the future, and even just now, cards that are like counter spells and all that, they require that they are reactions. So I think that's a like really good example where okay, like it's a little bit harder to learn now, but in the long run, the cards are just gonna be like way cooler.
Now, outside of Errata, we've also heard players ask why we can't create an unchanging definitive rules document. We don't believe this works for Riftbound or TCGs at large, but it's important to discuss why. We've designed Riftbound for a wide audience and keeping it strategically deep for TCG players. When we released the core rules, important edge cases and interactions weren't really covered. We needed more data from real-world play to inform those. Alongside that, as we create new sets and therefore new mechanics, old cards might have new use cases that the core rules prior to that set didn't account for. As a game team, we aspire for cards that encourage fun and memorable gameplay. We will take calculated risks with cards as players discover new ways to play with them, but that also means rules need to adapt to those discoveries. In rare, but not zero, cases, that means we need to errata cards because technically they are no longer compatible with the new rules that we need for new content.
So I think one example here that comes to mind with like cards that just like kind of like break with the new rules and the stuff is with Edge of Night, where essentially the card just doesn't work because it was an errata was done earlier, or the rules change was done earlier that gear cannot exist at a battlefield, but obviously Edge of Night is supposed to that okay, like you play it from hidden, then it equips to a unit at that battlefield, but technically it would have with the current text on it, it would bounce the base and then you couldn't do it. But now that's fixed. That's one of those things that they fixed.
We take this work incredibly seriously, and I hope this has helped give you more insight into how we think about Card Errata and how we work as a game design team. I want to thank all the Riftbounders around the world for their continued support and feedback, including those competing in Fuzhou, China this weekend. I wish I could be there with you all in person, but the team and I are very excited to see the top deck list coming out of the event and who will emerge victorious. I'll send it back to Chengren, and we hope you all have an amazing event.
Okay, so they did those erratas. I wanted to show you guys something more. So after this video, there was they issued a statement, which was basically an apology for players because it was done on such a short notice, because it was done only a couple of days before the event. So this is the English translator thing. Hello everyone. First of all, regarding the recent FAQ and errata issues that affect the player experience, I would like to once again offer our sincerest apologies to everyone. One, in the future, no errata summaries will be released within 2 weeks prior to China region competitive level events, including National Championship National. So before those events, there will be 2 weeks before that. Because this did impact, like I think might have been some frustration where, for example, because of the falling star in particular, like that, maybe it was part of your strategy, or maybe you didn't play, let's say you didn't like playing Zonia's Hour class because of falling star, but now the falling star doesn't really do the thing anymore where you waste the Zonias, and Zonias is kind of like better. And there was very little time for the players to kind of like prepare. Yeah. And then, while the official FAQ will continue to serve as guidance to help players play the game smoothly and may still be updated at key points, its content will avoid rule-based adjustments such as those seen in this instance, Starfall and Shuriman Sunstorm. I'm not sure exactly what those like are. Those is that Falling Star? But yeah. But yeah, it's more gonna be for just to explain and not really change the gameplay, because in those instances the gameplay was changed in regard to how you can like even set legend and Zhonya's hourglass and all that. 3. Before official FAQs and Errata summaries formally take effect, we will invite players and official judge to conduct testing, directly gather feedback, and make adjustments accordingly. I think that's good. It's going to be interesting what like kind of like windows of opportunity, and what will be the time frames when Erratas will be done in the future. Because sometimes there might be an event that's not in China, like some Western event, and then there's Chinese events, and then also when they do these Erratas, I assume it's always gonna like be both regions. I mean, it has to be both regions at the same time, and or every region at the same time. So we'll see. Okay, and here is the Errata document. For those interested, it's on the official site. There was a bunch of cards. This is quite long, so we're not going to go through like this entire thing. But if you're interested in knowing like what has been changed and knowing all the cards before set 2 arrives and all that, it's probably worth checking out, especially if you're a judge or competitive player. But yeah, all the cards are mentioned here. So this is probably worth checking. I'm going to put the link down below for those who want to check out all the cards that have been changed. It's pretty important to know. So yeah. Alright guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.